Honestly, I did the stupidest thing I think you can do. I moved somewhere where I didn't know anybody to do something I'd never done when I'd never run a business before.
On today's episode of Rise, Grind, Repeat, we talked to Heidi from Lifeguarding Legacies. We discussed how she differentiated herself, which allowed her to grow during COVID. Let's dive right in. Heidi, thank you so much for coming on to another episode of Rise, Grind, Repeat. Really excited about this because usually when you talk to anyone that deals with law, you're going to get a big bill, but hopefully I won't see a big invoice come, but would love to kind of pick your brain.
No, I actually didn't get the bill from your office to be on here, so I appreciate it, Dustin. This is fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, before we kind of pick your brain on everything that you do, would love to learn a bit more about yourself and just kind of your entrepreneurial journey and really how did you get started in entrepreneurship?
Well, that's a great question. Honestly, I did the stupidest thing I think you can do. I moved somewhere where I didn't know anybody to do something I'd never done when I'd never run a business before.
You set yourself up for success.
Great business model.
So where was that place and what was the thing that you wanted to do that you've never done before?
Well, I went to law school back in the day. 2004, my alma mater opened a law school. I was part of that inaugural guinea pig class to go through where, we got beat up good so we could get their accreditation, and graduated 2007, took the Florida bar, thought I'd go practice in Florida, which is where I had been before I went to law school.
Okay.
The economy tanked in 2007, as we all know. We ended up in Houston. I went back into education, which is what I did before law school, and I stayed in education for the next 15 years.
Okay.
So then we moved to Arizona with my husband's job, and I look at what they pay in education and say, no.
You didn't get excited?
I can't do that. It would have been a $30,000 pay cut. Who can do that?
It's insane. We're definitely underfunded when it comes to education here in Arizona. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I was trying to figure out, I wonder what chapter comes next. And I'd actually started to take some doctoral classes in education, thinking maybe I'll go towards superintendent or something like that. And I went to my law school 10-year reunion. And that's when I met up with a friend of mine who grabbed me by the arm and said, "You need to be doing what I'm doing." I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm an estate planning attorney." I said, "Yeah, I'd have to take the bar in Arizona." He goes, "Yep. And then you're going to come spend a week in Florida with me, learn what I do, take back and do it in Arizona." And I laughed. I thought this was the funniest thing I had ever heard. My husband, though, was there, and he didn't think it was quite so funny. He's been kind of anxious for me to use that law degree he helped put me through this whole time.
I can see that. Let's see some ROI from that.
Yeah. So he was, "I think you should really follow up with Josh. I think you should really do this." And I think mostly to humor him, I started kind of investigating. So what does an estate planner do? And I realized seminar work, education. Counseling clients. Okay, there's all those years in school counseling. It's a lot of coaching, helping people make good choices, and a lot of walking them through problem solving. Well, that's what I did in the behavior realm. And so I realized, holy cow, this is all the same exact skill set. Yeah. It's just different clients and a little different focus area. And I thought, I could really do that. So I did. I buckled down as a grandmother. I think I was the only grandma sitting for the Arizona bar, and started to practice because, again, moving somewhere where you've never done anything, where you don't know anyone, when you've never run a business, is a really good model. But
it forces you out of your comfort zone, that's for sure.
So there was definitely no comfort zone. In the meantime, in the last 3 years that I've been doing this, and I've only been at it 3 years, I've written a book. I've worked with a couple hundred clients now.
Wow, a couple hundred?
I know, isn't that crazy?
That is insane.
It's crazy. And I've found I love what I'm getting to do. It's exactly what I researched. I'm getting to do teaching. I'm getting to do counseling. I'm getting to do coaching. And I get to do that in an area of the law that people don't understand. And I get to break it down in a way that I don't think most attorneys can break it down.
I think the education background is huge because you're taking big ideas and breaking it down into a way that is consumable so that someone goes, "Oh, I get that." Because that's usually the hardest thing. I mean, for what we do, you got video and all these, it's like could easily just lose someone very quickly, and then they don't understand what we're actually talking about. And so being able to take that and not so much dumb it down, but be able to communicate it in a way that the average person can actually consume it and go, "Yeah, let's do that."
Exactly. And so that's what I strove to do when I wrote the book, Lifeguard Your Legacy. I took a lot of the blogs I had already written, which were super easy to understand, put them into an outline, filled in the blanks for the things that didn't cover, and ended up with a book that's about a 1-hour read cover to cover. And when people read this, they understand the parts they need to understand about what I do with their estate plan. Helps them make good decisions, gives them some ideas that are outside the box that maybe other attorneys might not have talked about. And it's actually been a huge marketing tool for me.
I love that you say that, because I mean, blogs, I don't know, I feel like so many people think they're just, I don't know, uncool or waste of time or whatever it may be. But I mean, for what you do, for what we do, all industries I feel are getting more complex in how you actually do the business and everything like that. And so those blogs are a way to really communicate it in an easier way to consume it. How big has content and just blogs in general played a role in really going from, I don't know anyone, to getting to 300 plus clients?
I'm not sure. It does seem that the clients have mostly been through networking and referrals. I mean, I was at 3 to 8 events a week because I didn't know anybody. For the first year and a half pre-COVID, that was how I spent my time. In fact, when I filed for my liability insurance that first year, at the end of the first year when you have to renew, I said, well, I only spend about 10% of my time with clients, so I don't think I should really be charged like a normal lawyer. I spend most of my time professionally networking, building a marketing group. And I said, so I'm not sure what I'm paying for yet. And they actually cut down my liability insurance costs based on that. And of course, it's grown since then, obviously, because clients have been added to the mix. But it was a lot of building that base, because really you can develop all the best content in the world. You have to have people to deliver it to.
Yep.
And if I didn't do the networking piece, then I don't have an email list to send that to. I don't have people to look at a blog. And other than, maybe if I spend a ton of money in SEO, but if you don't have clients, you don't have money.
Exactly. And then the SEO, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And so I think the networking, I mean, getting in front of people is the word of mouth is always so big. And in order to create that word of mouth, you got to meet people so the word of mouth happens and stuff like that. And so, I mean, you went from knowing no one here in Arizona to the 300 plus clients. Is that really the primary source of how you got yourself out there, was networking events? And
networking, I would say, is just huge. Now, I will say, I'm going to name drop here for a minute, but everyone, if you are in Phoenix, you have got to meet Jason Bressler.
He was actually in here 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
3 weeks ago. Yeah, recently.
He is the genius connector. You ask him, I need to meet someone who is a financial advisor, and he will blow up your inbox with 20 introductions to financial advisors. That's actually how my business really got started. More than anything is I got the networking passport that we're all familiar with here with Gelly.
Thanks, Gelly.
And yes, I love Gelly. And one of the first events that was on it was a Phoenix Metro Chamber breakfast that I went to.
Gotcha.
And there I met Jason. Jason sent 19 introductions. I met with all 19 people in the first 2 weeks. And my first client started there and has sped from there. So.
That's amazing. Most small business owners, entrepreneurs, I mean, understand I need to go out there and network, meet people, but once you get there, I feel so many people. I mean, I still do it quite a bit. Is all right, I'm here, but I don't know how to engage. I don't know how to network, essentially. Do you have any tips or suggestions on when someone gets there and all of a sudden they're feeling the pressure? I don't want to just talk to some random person and feel like I'm just selling. Like, how did you navigate the networking that then built the relationship that then landed clients?
That's a really great question. And I'm not sure I have a perfect answer. I just know what works for me.
Yep.
What works for me is if you're going to show up to a place, try to have 2 deep conversations. You may not even really talk about your business. Just 2 really good human conversations where you connect and that are memorable. And if you like that person and they like you, then the next time you run into them at a networking event, because let's be honest, we all go to multiple networking events, the next time you see them, oh yeah, you're the one who. And it's from those connections over time. Now they're in your database. Now they see your emails. You've had all of these multiple touch points with these people that have some positive sense of how you made them feel in that conversation. And to me, that's really where it comes. this networking around the room telling your commercial, unless you need something in the room that they said and you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I need that. I don't really find that that's very effective for me.
I mean, agree 100%. I think even outside of networking, I think that even transcends into all marketing. I think a lot of people think it's, hey, we do digital marketing, all of a sudden everyone's going to want to come to you. You have to build that relationship, communicate who you are, build the brand awareness. And to your point, it's crazy. It takes 15 plus touch points to get in front of someone before they actually start remembering you. And then once the remembering starts, then it takes some time to actually go, all right, I want to do business with you. So the fact that, you see multiple people really helps build the relationship. But one thing that I like that you said is two big communications or deep levels of conversation. Having a goal in mind, I think, is big, because I think a lot of people go in just saying, all right, I'm going to go spew everything that I do. I'm going to get 8 clients. But it's not a realistic goal.
Well, and if all you're doing is that, you're working around the room, passing out business cards, telling people what you do, you are not memorable. That's what everyone else in the room is doing.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have 15 touch points with that person before you become memorable, because you're doing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
You sit and you have 2 really deep conversations. You are memorable. It doesn't take 15.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But people go, well, it takes so much time, blah, blah, blah. But how much time would it take to get in front of 15? I mean, in that one sense, yeah, it's a microsecond here, microsecond there, but it might take 2 weeks, a month to finally get that memory ingrained, where if you just have a good conversation, it takes 30 minutes, an hour.
And I'll say this too. Don't go in thinking the 2 conversations are going to be my clients. You're going there to make friends that are going to be business contacts. And if you kind of go in with that idea, I'm going to make 2 new friends tonight.
Yep.
That's where business happens. Not that they are going to ever be your clients, but that they're going to remember you.
Yeah. I love that. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I mean, we bring it up in here as quite a bit. I mean, it's a weird mindset thing. How am I going to sell myself without going in and selling myself? I mean, we all played sports in here, and it's how can I throw the ball harder by slowing down how hard I throw and slowing down my swing so I can hit further. But it's knowing that slow down a little bit, and don't go in with the goal of selling. Just go in with going to build a relationship, and those sales will come.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
100%. The other thing I'll say is, a lot of people that deal with mindsets and all those kinds of things will talk about that ever-present moment. And I don't do a lot of the woo-woo stuff. I tend to be a little bit more analytical as an attorney. But the idea that when you are sitting with someone, don't try to be thinking about, what is this going to do for my business?
Yeah.
Don't let that be part of your thinking or your conversation. Just be present. Just get to know a friend.
Yeah.
Have some fun. I mean, for crying out loud, you're at a networking event. Have that glass of wine and have a nice conversation, and consider this your entertainment for the night. And it's just entertainment that through time does build a business.
No, I can agree more. And you've been doing all the right things. I mean, in 3 years, that's over 100 clients a year. I mean, that's huge. I mean, you're doing the right things.
Well, it certainly wasn't 100 clients the first year. Okay, just so you know, that was rough.
Well, that just means this last year has been that much bigger.
It's been huge. And I will say there's a business model that's a niche. I'm sure you talk a lot in here about having a niche. There's a bunch of estate planning attorneys out there, and I will say the people in this industry are fabulous. I am so lucky in Phoenix to be among the estate planners. We are a sharing, loving, kind group. Our clients hug us. Cool. We're a different kind of lawyer. And I love the people I get to do this with. But most of them like to be in their office and have clients come to them. That's fine. That's a traditional model. It's worked for a long, long time. People are still very comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I don't like to do anything the easy way.
I like it.
So I have a niche. I do concierge client work.
Yeah.
I go to the client in their home. And the other thing that I do different is I recognized early on when I saw the packets we're supposed to use for intake that, are prescribed that the industry uses. It's 14 pages of fairly small print things that people have to fill out. And I realized, first of all, people aren't going to want to do it, so they're going to delay coming back. So you're creating a hindrance to a sale. From a marketing standpoint, that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Second, there's just things you miss in that form. it says fill in your kids' names and their birth dates. Well, that's straightforward enough. Of course, people can fill that in.
Yeah.
But if I am instead sitting with them and say, tell me about your kids, I get a very different reaction than their names and birth dates. Eventually, I'll get their names and birth dates. But I'm going to get, this kid's really, this grown kid is struggling with alcohol or is getting ready to go through a divorce. I get, this kid is really struggling with decisions. This kid may have special needs. This kid, It's a whole different level of conversation that you would never capture having them fill out forms. So my clients don't fill out any forms. Now, that means I can't do as many clients in a day as someone sitting in an office because I'm having to drive and I'm having to do that work.
But how much more appreciative are your clients?
Yes.
And that's the key. And even through that, it's here you can fill out this form or we can have a conversation. The end result, you're going to get the same information, but the experience that you give your clients is that much better. I mean, probably charge a little bit more so it pays for the not being able to take on so many. But at the end of the day, your clients are going to stay longer because you're focusing on them. And really what you're doing, I mean, how everyone else does it, they're kind of putting themselves at the focus of the conversation by you have to come to me. You're changing it and putting the focus on your client, which is what everyone wants.
Right. Exactly right. And so it's been a neat concierge model.
Has anyone else kind of followed suit? I mean, it sounds like it's a pretty innovative thing for the industry.
Well, I'll tell you what, during COVID, it was fantastic because, we do have a nice group of other attorneys and people would say, well, I'm not leaving my house. Can you come to me? And they'd say, no, the only one I know that does that is Heidi. And so I got referrals even in my industry from other attorneys who don't use that model. There are a handful. I think there's 3 in Greater Phoenix that do that out of a couple hundred attorneys. So it's a pretty small niche. Not that I want everyone to jump ship and start going into it. I like having a niche. But it's a good niche for me.
So when it comes to, it's been great how you've kind of grown the business, but really want to learn a little bit more about estate planning. So what all does that entail? It's, I mean, from my perspective, it's, well, I got assets. I want them to be dispersed how I want them. I mean, is that essentially what it is, or how do you help someone plan appropriately?
That's a great question. If that's really what you believe, you'd probably go to LegalZoom and think you've got something great. Because, education is power.
100%.
And yes, distributing your assets is definitely a part of estate planning, but it's really not the whole thing by any stretch. So there's 2 key documents that every estate plan starts with. They either go with a will or they go with a trust.
Okay.
2 very different ways to accomplish some of the same things. A trust does more than a will does. A trust costs more than a will does, but not everyone needs a trust. Yeah. So there's 2 different models. The first one is the will. Everyone's familiar with that. You've seen lots of TV shows that make great drama out of after someone dies, the attorney's in an office and they're talking about this reading. I love Brewster's Millions. He had to spend down all that money from his family. Hilarious. It's usually not that dramatic, but you're usually deciding how you want your assets distributed in a will. Yep. Just like what you talked about. The other thing a will do is you can assign the guardians for your children. So to me, that's the bigger reason to have a will. If you have minor children, you need to be able to name a guardian. If you fail to do that, then what you've got is you've got the state that gets to make that decision for you.
It's never good to put a decision in the state or government's hand.
Well, right. I mean, they're going to try to get it right.
Yeah.
If you only have one person that would have taken on the kids anyway, they'll probably end up with the right result. But you can end up with nobody really wants the kids, and then they're a ward of the state going through the foster care system till they can find someone. Or you can have both sides of your family that fight over the kid, and now the kid's getting dragged back and forth. I mean, and it could be that the people that are fighting are not even the people you would have chosen.
Yep.
So I really think the strongest reason, if you've got minor children, to get a will has nothing to do with your assets. It has to do with the guardianship for your kids.
Yeah, and it's just having that peace of mind, or just knowing that, God forbid something happen, that at least their happiness, their joy, their future is at least carved out or been thought about. And I mean, that's something that everyone should be doing if you have a little one.
Absolutely, 100%. Like when you're in the hospital, I really feel like the OB nurses should say, okay, now you've got this responsibility. Make sure that if you're not there to be able to take care of the baby, someone is. Yeah. I almost feel like the conversation should start there.
Yep, agree. It's amazing. I mean, I have a 7-month-old, how, I had to take tests and all this to drive a vehicle, but have a kid, there's no have fun, go learn on your own, and
Right.
there's no tests or anything. I mean,
Right.
it is crazy.
It is 100%. So a will can also make sure that if you've got fur babies,
Yeah.
it can also designate where they would go. Not quite as difficult a process as the whole court process for a child, but you can still appoint that as well. So a will is somewhat limited in what it accomplishes, but it does those things well. Even with a will, you're going to get the extra documents. Any good attorney is going to make sure you have the other things that go with it. So the other documents that go with a will, you've got a power of attorney, and that's during your life. It's a person who can take care of your finances if you can't. So you get to designate who does that.
Okay.
Your healthcare power of attorney is the person that's making medical decisions if you can't. HIPAA waivers are the people that can, if they showed up in a hospital waiting room, you authorize them to talk to a doctor, find out how you're doing. They can't make decisions, but at least they can be there and ask questions. And then living wills, where you make those end-of-life decisions about, do you want to be artificially kept alive and those kinds of things, where you get to make those so your healthcare power of attorney doesn't have to.
Gotcha.
So, and then also in a will, a good will is also going to include some asset planning to make sure that you can try to avoid probate. Here in the state of Arizona, we have what are called beneficiary deeds. They allow you to decide who gets your house when you pass, so the court doesn't have to be involved in that process. Kind of neat.
Yep.
Those can be included with a will package. And then we can also do beneficiary forms for our cars. We can advise you about doing beneficiaries on your bank accounts. So everything can pass. So it's a really comprehensive thing, way more than filling out a document on LegalZoom.
Totally. And with that, I mean, if things are getting passed, how does that work from a tax perspective? Or is that something that don't have much insight into? And is there a difference between a will and trust?
Okay, well, we'll get into the trust here in just a second, but I will answer that tax question first because you raised it. It's a good one. In general, right now, it's $11.7 million that a person can have when they die that doesn't get taxed.
Wow.
So if you're a married couple, just double that.
Wow, really?
It's a fair amount of money.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you, in 2026, that's going to cut down. Most people believe it'll go to about $6 million a person. That's still $12 million a married couple. How many of my clients are in that bracket? Not very many. So in general, most people don't have to worry about taxes. Now, we did have a change in administration. The new change in administration does want to get its hand on more tax dollars, and there have been all kinds of proposals that would lower the tax exclusion amounts and get rid of some of the wonderful benefits that we've had, and get rid of some of our tax holidays. Now, at this point, there's no reason to necessarily believe it's all going to pass, but it's certainly all been proposed, and it would change my world and my trust world if it does pass. So taxes are an issue. I will say it's not that you pay no taxes. Anything that you have that had capital gains can be subject to taxes. So if you did, for example, an IRA where you didn't pay taxes going in, when it comes out during your retirement, you'd have to pay taxes. Yeah. Same thing. When it comes out, those taxes are going to have to be paid on what gained in that account when it's distributed. And to your kids, that has to be distributed within 10 years after you die. So that's how that works for those. Houses at this point still get a step up in basis. I know we're getting a little technical now, but basically that means that the value of the house is the value at the date of your death, not the value you bought it for. So capital gains are only what it increases after you die before it's resold. And so there's not a lot of taxes there because if you get a realtor, it's going to pretty much offset that gain. So generally, the only taxes you're going to end up paying in most estates are things like IRAs.
Gotcha. And I mean, I have seen recently that even they're trying to pass something to where it changes it, not the gains on the time that you pass away, but from the time you bought it.
Yes. Which the step up in basis. Yes.
That would be
if that goes away, that is a big, big deal. Now, so far, the proposal on losing sorry, we're going a little aside into some deep stuff, but so far what's been proposed is that it would be anything above $1 million would lose its step up in basis. So for a lot of people, your house isn't worth $1 million. If you have two houses, they might be. Yeah. But so it's still, they're considered this more of a wealth tax than they are just a general effect. But even if it gets passed, let's think about this. So let's say you've got your grandmother's house that she bought for $9,000 in California in 1920, right?
Yep.
And now it's $3 million. Are you really going to have to pay On $2 million of
Yeah,
gains.
you have to liquidate it. I mean, in order just to pay the tax bill. I mean, most people probably aren't going to have the money to pay that tax bill, right?
And are they going to be able to find what she paid for it in 1920? I mean, where's
Yeah,
the record coming from?
that's another very good point.
So I'm kind of anxious to see,
Yeah.
even if it were to pass, how they're going to propose that. If they're going to put some stop date that they just go back to evaluation in the 90s, or
Yeah.
where are they going back
Yeah.
to? So it'll be anxious to see how that plays out.
Yep. So how does a trust
Oh,
differ? Here we go.
I will tell you, one of my taglines when I go to networking is, because I'm all about that trust, I love trusts. They really are the Cadillac vehicle for taking care of your estate plan.
Mm-hmm.
I jokingly tell clients, a trust can let you do anything you might have wanted to do. So where a will, it's going to decide who gets what. They're going to receive everything in lump sums. If they're a child, someone's going to be responsible for managing that lump sum until they're old enough to have it, because kids can't take under a will. Under a trust, you really can. If you can dream it, you can do it. So we've done things where if the goal was to get your son-in-law to do better at work, we can match his W-2 income every year after you die, so that you're seeing him do something productive.
Yeah.
We can have ongoing, for my own kids, what I have is I have ongoing gifts every year that are going to be the today equivalent of $15,000 a year. Well, that means that it's below the poverty line. They can never quit and be a trust baby. They have to work, but it's enough that every couple years they can get a really nice car. They can do a kitchen remodel. They can take some nice family trips. They can pay off some stupid credit card debt. It'll supplement their lives without being the one thing they relied on. They still have to be self-sufficient.
Makes sense. So, I mean, if you have a little one or someone that it's like, want to help them out, but they have a few years before they're going to mature, you can kind of set how you disperse the money, the assets, whatever it may be, in a way that if it takes 10 years, you're going to kind of give it to them over that 10 years, or you have full control of where it goes and whatnot.
Well, and it can be for the rest of their lives in some cases, depending on what things are in there. Obviously, if it's IRAs, it still has to be fully distributed in 10 years.
Yeah.
But if you've got a house that's being sold and that's funding it, if you've got life insurance, that can be spread for longer. And then you've got these options to do some really neat things. My grandkids, by the way, I spoil them already. I don't intend to stop after I die. And so my trustee is set up basically to say yes. So if my grandkids want soccer camp, the answer is yes. If they want to take baton twirling lessons, yes. Piano, absolutely. My trustee will pay for anything that would supplement their life during their growing up years. So plus then take care of some college, a first wedding. Yeah. So because all those things, they're my grandbabies.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. So I mean, what's the difference in cost typically? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it, but what are the?
It's usually going to be somewhere in the 2.5 to 3 times more to do a trust. And part of the reason is with a will, we're just doing the document prep. With a trust, we're helping you put all of your assets into it.
Gotcha.
So we have to know what those assets are. We have to plan accordingly. We have to walk you through and work with filling out forms with you. It's a lot. Yeah. And so it's just a more comprehensive process. Plus, it's a lot more custom. We take some real time to brainstorm. The other nice thing about a trust is if you are incapacitated, remember we talked about the power of attorney form with a will. Mm-hmm. That's someone that takes care of the finances when you can't. And you have one of those. But when you have a trust, your trustee is the one that takes on that role, and they already have access to all your accounts.
Gotcha.
So it's a little smoother transition in dealing with incapacity. Yeah. Whereas with the power of attorney, sometimes you'll have a bank say, we don't recognize this form. Yep. And then you have to go through a fight to get access to the funds.
Yeah, I'm sure things fall through the cracks. I'm sure there's accounts or whatever that, it
gets to be a challenge where a trust really makes that seamless. Now, we'll get there. You'll get what you need under a power of attorney eventually, but it can be a bit of a struggle. Yeah. Whereas with a trust, it's just seamless. And same thing with a will. If you don't have every asset with a way for it to pass, it's going to go through probate. If you've got a trust and you've got all your assets in it, the trust never dies. That's why it's called a living trust. So when you die, it doesn't. So it avoids ever going to probate. It also has the word revocable in there, meaning you can still change it during your life. But it's like, if I'm really getting technical with a trust, it's a contract. It's a contract with you, and you. So it's kind of a weird
Your present self, future self, and
legal
yeah,
idea, but it's you are the grantor, you're the ones putting things into it. You're the trustee, you're the one managing it, and you're the beneficiary who benefits from it. So really, even though the trust owns everything on paper, you're still doing everything with it that you would have done during your normal lifetime. You can still sell
gotcha.
things, you can
Yeah,
still, move things around, you can still invest. It's still yours.
yeah,
You just got to make sure it's still in the name of the trust.
makes sense. And if the trust is 2.5 times more expensive than a will, what is the typical cost to draft up a will? Is there ongoing costs, or what does that look like typically?
Okay, so I'll speak for my costs individually here, but there's a range.
Yeah.
You can get a document preparer who's not a lawyer to do a will package as low as $500.
Okay.
Starting with a lawyer, you're going to be somewhere in that $1,000 range for a will package, a little more if it's a married couple usually. For my pricing right now for 2021, I'm still doing individual wills for $800 and a married couple for $1,000. In 2022, that's going up.
Well, reach out now before 2022 if you're wanting that discussion.
My trust pricing is going to remain fairly fixed even in 2022. I really like it's a nice pricing line and it works. So I'm $2,500 on a single. I'm $3,000 on a married couple, $3,500 on a blended family where we're having to do kind of a his, hers, and ours with some of the assets.
Gotcha.
So
Makes sense.
If we're treating the assets the same, it's just like a married couple. But
Gotcha. No, I think that's super reasonable for knowing that you have the peace of mind that what you've worked so hard to build up is going to the right places. It's going to be. You work hard to build these things up. You want to make sure they're going to the right spots, and under a couple $1,000s, and that's all done, and don't have to worry about it. I mean, it's very, very cheap cost in my opinion.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I like to think that people find it reasonable. There are certainly those who will charge more.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
I'm sure, and probably a lot less, and might not want to go that route.
Yeah, there's not a lot less. There are a few that you can find that are less, but there's plenty that are more.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what's been the most, I guess, exciting or fun story where someone came to you and just knew nothing, and after the education and the process, it was just like, wow, I didn't know I could do all this. Would love to kind of hear a success story.
Oh gosh, I love that part. So you know how people talk about their bartenders and their beauticians, that they tell them their whole life story? Yeah, the first time I sit with clients, I get the whole life story. So I become their best friend pretty quickly. And so there's a lot of stories I could tell. But I think a couple of the most significant ones that just show what a trust could do. I have a woman, love her, sweetest lady, single lady, divorced many, many years ago, spent much of her life as a single lady. Her only child got in some trouble when he was 19. And he ended up in prison for a 10-year sentence for drug-related offenses. And he's about 2 years from getting out, and it seems like he's wanting to go down the right track. But with drugs and alcohol and other addictions, people fall on and off. That's just the way it goes. So I took some creative liberty after I met with her of really sitting back and thinking about, if this was my kid, how would I want to deal with a situation like this? How would I want to provide for them now while they're in prison? How would I want to provide for them the first few years getting on their feet when they're out? And what am I going to do if they fall off and fall back into trouble? And what's the cycle look like for that to make sure that we really do take care of them throughout their life? And so that's exactly what we created for her. Is we created something where he'll get some care packages while he's in.
That's cool.
When he's out, it'll take care of getting set up in an apartment with that paid directly. So there's not that large sum of money for him to run off and get crazy on. It'll take care of kind of a living stipend, and it'll go up with his W-2 income as he becomes of self-sufficient. And if he falls off, it'll pay for treatment. It'll pay for testing. It'll pay for his education and health and maintenance until he's back on, and then he can start having that W-2 match again. So
that's really cool.
It'll just always, it'll never enable him.
Yeah.
But it'll always take care of him.
And I bet you she is so appreciative of that. I mean, that's, I'm sure you get many thanks for that.
It was a pretty special one to work on because, this is her only family.
Yeah.
And we all know any one of us, but for the grace of God, could have gone down that same road.
Yeah.
And so it's, it was neat. And lots of families who were just, we've got blended families where maybe one of them makes more. And so we have to account for how do we take care of both spouses and still provide for each of their independent kids with blended families in a way that's fair and yet
Yeah.
still feels like a
Yeah.
family that we could all come to agreement on. So there's a lot of marital counseling.
I can only imagine. Wearing two hats there, the planning and the psychiatrist a little bit.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that. So there's, and it's the whole gamut, and a lot of just healthy families wanting to do the right thing and take care of their children and their grandchildren. So it runs the gamut, and a lot of people who just want to leave a mark on. Oh, my first client, this was cool. She was single, never married, no kids, but a large family that was all. She had amassed a pretty good savings for herself working as a W-2 employee. She'd been a saver.
Okay.
Yeah. But her family ran a bunch of businesses and all made more money than she does. So her family really doesn't need her money. So we sat down and we figured out, okay, well, this person lives in Hawaii and loves to do nature hikes.
That's
What
cool.
if we give to a nature conservatory where he is? This person really is into, we just went through and found charities for each honorarium charities for each person in her family that would mean something to each person in her family.
And that's, I mean, that again, probably super happy because she's probably sitting there going, I have money, but it's not going to like make my family happy. They already have that. So getting creative and, okay, well, how can I still use this money to still align with what my family loves to do? And I'm sure her even telling that was there, that they were probably appreciative, made her feel good, and probably something that she didn't even know was even on the table.
Well, she came into that first meeting. I know I need to do this. I have no idea what to do. And so we brainstormed together and came up with things. And it's kind of a beautiful, I think that's part of what I like the most is the creative people part of how do we solve these problems in a way that makes them feel like they're leaving that legacy they really wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, so. It's not black and white. It's creative thinking. You're a problem solver, and no, it's amazing. I mean, you're helping so many people plan for their future, helping their family out. Shifting over the spotlight to you, what are you working on? What are you trying to accomplish in the short term, maybe next 3 to 6 months from a personal level, but also for the business?
Okay, well, since I started this business, my 5-year goal. At one point, I'll say it was a 3-year goal. It didn't make it.
At least you have lofty goals. I mean, it's better than overshooting it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAGs, is that what they call them? Is something like that, yes. So my BHAG was I wanted to make enough money financially that my husband wouldn't have to work. He has been at the grindstone as a W-2 corporate hamster wheel runner our whole married lives. And he's been a great provider. He's a great partner. We've been married 29 years. He's awesome. I've known him since I was 11. And I would absolutely love to get to the point in my business where he could choose to work.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want him to not work because I think he'd get bored. He's a workaholic. But to choose where and how, he's never had that. He's always kind of just been forced to keep the reins on.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. I would say that's probably the biggest one. I'd also, I'm using my daughter somewhat. She didn't quite finish her degree. Long story there. I'm using her to do some admin things. And that I think that's built some of her confidence. And I'd love to see my business get to the point where she really finds her sole purpose.
Yeah.
And I think she's gaining some of that confidence and that kind of thing through it too. So, like a lot of people, my human side, it's going to be about my family.
Yeah. 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 No, it's funny because it's a similar story. I'm like a semester and a half away from graduating with an accounting degree at ASU. And it's like, so I got almost there and then life happened and didn't finish it up. But it sounds like she's probably going to learn her kind of what makes her happy working with you a lot quicker than the college route. I mean, it's, to me, I learned a lot more. I mean, I learned a lot, accounting, book smarts, in college, but what truly makes me happy? What do I want to do? What do I want to impact? All that, I mean, came in real life work. And I'm sure that's what she's learning more of, which probably going to be put to good use in the near future. Well,
and being a stay-at-home mom with 2 littles. I mean, my grandson turned 4 in March, and my granddaughter will turn 3 the end of this month.
Oh, wow.
And so they're 2 that have her hands full all the time. So
little Tasmanian devils, that's the age where they're just, running around.
Yeah. They're so fun, though. And they're so funny. It's amazing how it was true of my 2 kids as well. 2 kids that come from the same parents genetically, raised in the same house, can be so very different.
Yep. No, it's well, not so different there, but I mean, just watching them grow up. I mean, it's so fun. I mean, I'm only 7 months into it, but it's just every single day you learn something new or they do something new, and it's just going back to planning out your future. It's just that love. It's like how being irresponsible, doing nothing, knowing that something happens that's what she could have got might not have been what I wanted. You know what I mean? And just having that plan of attack, I think, is just huge.
It is, absolutely. Take care of those babies, man. That's
Mhm.
what it's all about.
Yeah.
And then if you do a good job raising them, then you get to spoil your grandkids. If you do a bad job by spoiling them, then you get to raise your grandkids. So I didn't make that up, but I found it true.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's my parents love spoiling the little ones. So
Yeah.
I know.
Well, there's a magic thing that happens the first time you hold a grandbaby.
Oh, I can imagine.
Just like the Grinch, your heart grows 3 sizes that day.
Really?
I kid you
I
not.
mean-
And you want to do something different in the world. So it's a neat, and I get to be part of that too with Trust. It's
Yeah.
that different thing you can do in the world, right? When
Yeah.
your heart just supersized. So
Yeah. No, love everything you're doing. Love all the growth that you've had in the last 3 years.
thank you.
You're gonna accomplish that goal of allowing your husband to have the choice of working, where to work, and all that. And I'm sure that'll be a huge accomplishment. I can't wait to see that. But anyone that's watching that got their wheels turning on. Maybe I should start thinking about my estate and everything like that. How would they be able to reach out to you and start a conversation?
Fantastic. Well, I try to make that super easy. I have just about every way that you can reach me, you can reach me. So probably the best way is you go to lifeguardinglegacies.com. That's my website. On there, I've got all kinds of information. A lot of the things I talked about today is there. You can on there book an appointment directly. You can go on live chat on there and get information from people that man a chat thing all the time. It's got the phone number on there, which is 602-529-1827. There's a live person to take your call 24/7, 365, and they get messages to me very quickly. If you tell them you're a prospective client, they'll try to get through just reaching me directly. If I can't answer, I'm probably with somebody, but I get back to people pretty quick. So
That's awesome. I have to pick your brain on what that service is that you're using.
it's well, I'll just say it. It is for attorneys, but
Gotcha.
it's called Smith AI, and they
Gotcha.
do the chat and the phone answering, and I don't know how small practices work without that. They do such a phenomenal job of making. The other thing they do is they screen sales calls. So
That's
if
huge.
you're thinking you're listening to the podcast and thinking, well, I can sell this to an attorney, good luck. My gatekeepers do a really good job.
That is great. The power of gatekeepers. Isn't it amazing what they do to your time?
Yes,
Make more of it.
absolutely. When I answered all my own phone calls,
It's tough.
it was tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they do a really good job of making sure the people get to me that should get to me.
It's awesome. Heidi, thank you so much for coming in. This has been great learning more about yourself and your business. And like I said, excited to watch you continue to grow.
Thank you. Such a pleasure, Dustin. I can't believe we didn't do this before.
I know.
Thank you.